Like many others, I was quite surprised to see that Trump and his cronies are actually going ahead with their little trade war. Some have postulated that tariffs are just a bluff, part of some backwards 4D chess negotiation tactic, and yet here we are, 100+% tariffs between China and the US. In principle, the Trump team's plan is quite simple. By imposing tariffs, they want to A. isolate China while providing leverage for negotiations with other countries, and B. turn the US back into an...
Okay, so these are the two contradictory different arguments for the tariffs, okay? One is it isolates China and it gives us leverage for trade negotiations. This is the art of the deal. Art of the deal. Fairy Queen was streaming earlier, do a collab stream. I don't know Fairy Queen, and I don't, she's like a hardcore feminist, like giga feminist, right? I don't know what we would talk about. That is not something that I concern myself much with. Anyways, not to say I'm not a feminist. I love women. All right. We love women here. All right. Isolating China, leverage for trade negotiations with other countries. This is the art of the deal. We're going to put on tariffs, and then we're going to negotiate with them, and we're going to come out with new trade deals that are amazing for the United States, and it's going to bring prices down. Okay. B, turning the U.S. back into an industrial, export-oriented country. This is the argument that we're putting on these tariffs from these other countries so that we can make American manufacturing more, what? Competitive. We want our prices at home to match the prices of those countries over there. But we're not going to be able to make our stuff any cheaper, so we're going to have to make their stuff more expensive. So we put a tariff on, their shit becomes more expensive, makes it to where people are more incentivized to buy stuff from the United States that is manufactured inside of the United States. This is the second argument for the tariffs. But there are massive issues with both, which I'm sure that we're going to get into over the course of the 15-minute video. But just like immediately, the turning the U.S. back into an industrial, export-oriented country is the one that really gets me. Because, again, we all knew that if the United States put tariffs on other countries, they were going to put tariffs on us. If every country in the world has reciprocal tariffs put on us, or at least every major trading partner that we could possibly desire, why the would a company choose to build a new factory in the United States? Why would they do that? Because if they produce it here in the United States and they ship it out to someone else, those other countries have tariffs on us because we tariffed them. Blanket tariffs. So why would they not build in some other country where the labor is cheaper and they can sell to every other market on earth besides the US market without tariffs? They would just probably eat that cost or not sell to us. So that's why B, I love that argument because it is so backwards. It's all underpants gnome tier argumentation. I have no idea what the that is even supposed to approximate getting close to trying to describe. What the does that mean? Subaru is pulling out of the US? Wait, like full send? No shot. Wait, is Subaru? Wait, hold on. Subaru is Japanese? Why did I think Subaru was European? Search South Park underpant gnome. It's a 20-year-old meme. I am an old man. Well, listen, I'm an old man too, but I just never really watched South Park. Does it sound European? To my untrained American ears, very much so, yes. South Park underpant gnome. Oh, look at that. Pretty sad. What do you mean? I can totally see it sounding Japanese now, Subaru, right? But I could totally also see that being some stupid sounding, Nordic language like Swedish or, Norwegian or some dumb Eastern European language. Sounds stupid. All right. Listen, Actually, I don't think there's a European language that sounds normal except for English to me. They all sound a little silly. Is there a single one? Spanish is probably the least silly sounding language besides English in Europe. French sounds silly. Italian sounds goofy as okay. German, of course. I'm not sure if I know what Polish sounds like, but I assume vaguely Eastern European. I'm spending way too long talking about this. Sorry. Insulting the language of the Vatican. What about Greek? You know, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not entirely sure I've ever heard someone speaking Greek in my entire life. It sounds like someone with marbles in their mouth. Jesus. China doesn't need us nearly as much as we need them. Arguably, the people of China will be better off once China cuts ties with the US. I'm not sure if that is true. Like, I have thought that that is a possibility, but I kind of go back and forth on it. I think China's economy is a lot more precarious than ours is. And I think that there is a possibility. It's a small possibility, right? But there is a non-zero possibility that the tariffs do lead to some kind of domino effect, just because there are so many weaknesses of the Chinese economy. Like, their housing market kind of sucks. They have a bunch of debt that's probably not going to get repaid, and they're trying to figure out what to do with that. They have massive energy delivery issues. So, like, there are some massive issues that China has economically, infrastructurally, that, you know, the tariffs and trade with the United States certainly, you know, that being cut off certainly doesn't help. But I'm not sure who could or couldn't last longer. Simply because China would have to completely fail, right, before their government ever changed course. The United States, we have an actual functioning democracy as it stands right now. It's entirely possible that the voters speak and China just has to wait for the voters to speak. We're at the whims of the masses. China isn't, you know? Greek sounds pretty similar to Spanish. I'm sorry, I don't believe you.
Γεια σας. Μιλάω Ολλανδικά, είναι η μητρική μου γλώσσα και μιλάω Αγγλικά, Γερμανικά, Ισπανικά και τώρα Ελληνικά, αλλά ακόμα μαθαίνω Ελληνικά. Μπορώ να μιλήσω, αλλά θέλω να μάθω περισσότερες λέξεις.
Αν έπρεπε να βάλεις αυτές τις γλώσσες σε μία σειρά, να ξεκινήσεις δηλαδή από τη γλώσσα που είναι για σένα πιο εύκολη.
To my untrained American Angloid ears, this sounds like a perfect 50-50 combination of Spanish and Russian. Okay. Underpants Gnome, and then we're watching the tariffs video. Jesus Christ. No more languages.
Damn, dude, this place is huge.
Remind me later.
It's almost as big as Carmen's ass. No, it isn't, you guys.
This is where all our work is done.
So what are you gonna do with all these underpants that you steal?
Collecting underpants is just phase one. Phase one, collect underpants.
So what's phase 2?
Hey, what's phase two? Phase one, we collect underpants. Yeah, but what about phase two? Well, phase three is profit. Get it?
I don't get it.
You see, phase one, collect underpants.
Oh, is this the... Okay, yeah, I know the meme. I didn't know that's what the origination was. All right. Gas, remind me to look at the Romanian language after we're done here. All right. I feel guilty. All right. I feel guilty now because that is your language. And we just went through all the languages that sound silly and I don't know what yours sounds like. So now I'm moving on and I seem like an asshole. So now you have to remind me to watch it. Okay. Isolating China. Okay. So we talked about this. Let's keep going.
Industrial, export-oriented economy. But could any of these plans ever work, even to a limited extent? Let's take a look. First, let's consider point A, isolating China and gaining leverage in trade negotiations with other countries. Just what does the Trump team plan to do here exactly? Especially with the whole threatening your closest allies bit. Have they gone mental, or is there a plan behind all this?
Whatever,
Some might ask. Well, there is a plan in fact, and it's quite mental. Yanis Varoufakis wrote about this recently in an article you should definitely check out after this video. The plan here seems to be to basically split the world into two camps. Those who get to enjoy economic closeness to and military protection by America.
Oh, I thought this was going to be a video just speaking about tariffs. This is like a whole gobbledygook theory about the 4D chess that Trump is trying to do. Okay.
This video. The plan here seems to be to basically
I was super prepared to talk about tariffs to see if I agreed or didn't agree with this guy and add to the conversation, but me, this is going to be some dumb bullshit.
split the world into two camps. Those who get to enjoy economic closeness to and military protection by America, and those who do not. So the first category would include most Western nations and most other West-aligned countries. The second category would then include the likes of China and Russia. So, what's the catch? Well, countries of the first category get to benefit from lower tariffs and
Like, why would we want to cut off all of Africa? Isn't Africa like the largest growing market, both to buy from and to sell to? Why would we want to cut off all of Africa? Why would we want to cut off India? India and China and then Africa, that's most of the world's people. Okay, so we got global population is 7.5 billion. 4.64 billion are in Asia, 1.34 billion are in Africa. That is 79 79% of the world. I don't know if this is actually their plan, okay? I don't know if this is actually their plan. But if this is their plan, then we're trying to cut off 20% of the world's population from 80% of the world's population. And the leaders of the 80% of the world's population are hostile to us. Hold on, I didn't even add in India. Oh, I guess Asia would count in India, even though India is technically a subcontinent, right? Okay.
oh, what's the catch?
You're assuming they have a plan? This video is assuming that there's a plan. I almost don't even want to watch the video anymore. Because I don't think it goes any deeper than Trump thinks tariffs are cool. I think that's where it begins and ends. Did you watch the timeline tariff video I sent you in general a day ago? No. Can you resend it in chat? Because I don't know if I can make it through this video. Let's see if there's anything interesting. No, the video argues they don't have a plan. I don't think that they do. I think that Trump just thinks tariffs are cool. I think that's literally just it.
Well, countries of the first category get to benefit from lower tariffs and military protection at the low price of America dominating their economies. Basically, they would be forced to let in American exports, move their industrial bases to the US, and then function as export markets for American products as America makes bank on this arrangement.
Tariffs would be cool if they worked like Trump thinks they work. Yeah, if there was some, one cure-all lozenge for the economy that makes us powerful and everybody else weak and subservient. Yes, that would be really cool, wouldn't it be?
Those countries that remain outside of this protection racket will be forced to pay the US in the form of tariffs. So is this plan viable? To quote an eternal classic,
sounds good, doesn't work, Never gonna happen.
Turns out other countries might have differing opinions on this issue. If you try to strong-arm a bunch of countries into becoming your economic vassal states, they might just have something to say about it, especially when it comes to economic blocs which are about the same size as the US, like the European Union. See, these prospective vassal states might just start talking among each other, saying things like, wow, it would sure suck to lose our industry and become economically subservient to a country run by a bunch of incompetent, weird idiots. The EU is even giving its staff burner phones to stop them from being spied on in the US. And isn't that something? Burner phones are useful, but regular people need something more practical. Well, now, thanks to NordVPN, you can take steps immediately. The only thing it cannot...
Hey guys, you use his thing, okay? NordVPN, and use his, look, there's a link right here. You can find it if you click on the video, okay? I don't want to sit through the advertisement.
Protect you from is inviting a journalist to your illegal signal chat room where you discuss US attack plans. NordVPN alliance leaving the US out of it, like this video. So prospective vassal states see that the US is run by a bunch of idiots. So they instead form their own economic alliance, leaving the US out of it, like the EU-Mercosur trade agreement, or the EU-India free trade agreement, or a potential EU-China trade agreement. And this aggressive American posturing also incentivizes countries to look for a new global reserve currency, one that isn't controlled by a bunch of weird idiots, like the euro. And the latter is a particularly big problem for Trump and company.
Luckily, the only currency that probably could contend with the dollar would be the euro, and that currency is simply from what the little econ YouTube channels that I listen to have talked about with like currency devaluation videos and shit like that. The euro is not volatile, right? Which is good for a currency. You want it to not be volatile. You don't want there to be, you want whatever country it's from to be very stable, right? Because you don't want anything crazy to be going on inside of the country. You basically want to know, like, if I put my money here, it is going to stay there and I can access it in the future, and it's not going to get taken by some random warlord, and it's not going to get, appropriated by the government, and it's not going to be, XYZ corrupted, like we have laws around, bank fraud and shit like that. So if banks start trying to people out of their money, we'll throw people in jail. So we want people to feel comfortable putting their money in the United States. I don't know if the euro, first off, it is being controlled by, I don't know how many EU member states there are. 27, disparate countries that are not like the United States that have a federal government. It's just not as appealing as a reserve currency, because if one person leaves, right, like England did with Brexit, if one person leaves, which is totally possible, and it's only been, was the EU founded when I was born in 95? It was in 93, it says. So it's only been around since 93, and within that time, already one of the most important member states of the union left for no reason, at their own detriment. So, not as appealing of a reserve currency. So we're probably fine for right now, but it's not looking good if this goes on for a long period of time. Because if it goes on for a long period of time and we're not a stable country anymore, and we don't have stable markets, we don't have, stable political leadership, then that capital is going to go elsewhere. It's probably just going to go to Europe. The dollar is the reserve currency because the U.S. is seen as stable after we saved everyone's asses in World War II. We've completely burned that trust in the last 10 years. Yes, exactly. We went around and we made sure that everybody played by rules that everybody agreed to. Everybody was happy with the rules. Everybody was playing by the rules. Everything was chill. And then Trump comes along and he starts shitting and pissing and coming and then rolling around like a pig in shit and just like all over everything. And then Russia decides, okay, well, now we can completely destroy the liberal world order. China's working with them. Everybody is super confused. Biden goes in, tries to fix everything. Okay, we're going to... The US and UK have been in a battle for the last decade to see which country can make themselves harder. True. The dollar is backed by the US military. That is partially true, yeah. It was a reserve currency because you were unscathed after World War II. Yeah, that's what sourcing said. Tone down the American exceptionalism. Okay, I'm sorry. The more I learn about my country, the more I realize that we are exceptional and that we should have been acting more like a superpower. We should have been the one superpower and acted like it. But instead, everyone got... All right, we should have been the ones telling everyone else in the world, and we were for a while, but because of the way that we did it, everyone got mad at us. We didn't act like a superpower. We didn't act like a philosopher king, and because of that, we're paying the price. Let's keep watching.
Global US financial dominance, their ultimate leverage, hinges on a strong US dollar, which is the result of it being the global reserve currency. If that status is gone, then suddenly the US becomes just another country and controlled by a bunch of weird idiots, like the euro. And the latter is a particularly big problem for Trump and company. Global US financial dominance, their ultimate leverage.
Jesus Christ. I've never seen that graph. I did not know it was that brutal. Holy shit. That's brutal. Damn.
Hinges on a strong US dollar, which is the result...
Oh, there's the... See, when everyone was crying about the Chinese yuan, but they call it the renminbi. I don't know. Everyone said that was about to become the world currency reserve, like what, last year or the year before? BRICS is rising. Dude, look at that. They're smaller than the Japanese yen. That's rough. That's really rough.
Of it being the global reserve currency. If that status is gone, then suddenly the US becomes just another country. The reason why other countries put up with Trump's
Isn't low, not for being the world reserve currency, not like that.
bullshit is because America is the global financial center of the world. They cannot be circumvented because they control the global reserve currency. But now it seems the Trump admin no longer wants to have that role, which is insane. Their reasons for not wanting it actually ties into their second goal, turning the US back into an industrial, export-oriented economy. In the second half of the 20th century, America was famous for its manufacturing. This was the era when places like Detroit were at their height. Those idealized times when a factory worker was considered middle class and when the whole family could live on a single manufacturing salary. That world is gone, and the formerly booming towns and cities have since become rapidly depopulating urban wastelands ravaged by poverty, opioids, and neglect. And so Trump and company want to turn back the clock by forcing companies to return their manufacturing to the US, reviving the great industrial heartlands.
One thing that I am super curious about, I wonder if there is some specific plan for the Midwest that someone has that is a good plan to, invite or attract investment and, more jobs back to those areas. Because I don't know if I've seen anyone say like a specific vision that they have for the Midwest, right? Like the West Coast has tech jobs, the East Coast, they have finance. Middle America has farming. The South has oil and farming. But like the Midwest and, the Rust Belt, I don't know what the grand narrative there is. Because we still do a massive amount of manufacturing. Manufacturing exports USA 2024. In 2024, the U.S. manufactured goods exports totaled approximately $1.6 trillion. So that's way more than half of all of our exports. You know, Canada, Mexico, and China were the main export partners for the U.S. The three people that we have targeted the hardest with our tariffs are the people that we send our shit to the most. No investor in their right mind would make large infrastructure investments with Trumpism going strong. These people are authoritarians. They have no regard for free markets. Yeah, exactly. Like, a free market requires knowing that I'm going to get my money back at the very least. I at least want to know that if I put my money somewhere, it's going to stay there. It's not going to be taken away. I'm not going to lose it to instability because of political instability. Trump is the definition of instability. He only survived as a political monster in his first term because he didn't with the economy too much. He didn't do anything to the economy. He didn't make it better. He just let it go. He allowed it to continue. There's no specific action that he did that supercharged our economy. Free markets are as real as nonpartisans. Cool slogan, dude. Okay. Related to this, what is this? Japanese investors are selling U.S. treasuries. Japanese private financial institutions sold $17.5 billion of long-dated foreign bonds in the week ending April 4th. Subsequently, they dumped another $3.6 billion over the next 7 days. This marks the largest 2-week sell-off since the data began in 2005. They said Japan's finance ministry does not break down which countries bonds were sold. However, Japanese market strategists say a substantial share of selling was in either U.S. Treasuries or mortgage-backed securities. I need so much more background information, knowledge, because I still don't understand quite the treasury thing. I understand the basic part of like why it's bad that the treasury bonds are being sold off and the dollar is being, is dropping. Basically understand that, but like the mechanism behind and more like granularly, I haven't seen a good explainer for that yet. Just because I don't know where to look. Let's see. There we go.
Depopulating urban wastelands ravaged by poverty, opioids, and neglect. And so, Trump and company want to turn back the clock by forcing companies to return their manufacturing to the US, reviving the great industrial heartland, ushering in a new golden age of economic growth. That's the plan anyway. And the reasonable question to ask here is, how? The US economy is, quite simply, not set up for major industrialization and exports. It's set to siphon money out of everything it can to make shareholders richer.
I don't know why it won't let me pause by hitting the space bar. And if you did want to do this, and you were serious about this, and you weren't a clown show of an administration, you would probably start laying the groundwork and doing this in an intelligent way so that it lasts. But as it stands right now, all you're doing is the economy and not laying even the foundations. You're not even laying the foundations for a future of American manufacturing. Yes, Biden did do it right. Again, manufacturing construction spending over time. Let's pull it over here. Or how about this? Open image, new tab. There we go. So you can all see it. The spike is when Biden took office. This is where Biden took office. We had a couple of years of rough economic outcomes because of the pandemic. And then real private construction for manufacturing exploded after we passed all the infrastructure bill, the American Rescue Plan, the CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act. We see construction spending for factories explode. That's what you would do if you wanted to see manufacturing come back to the United States, if you wanted to do it for national security reasons. if you had any real interest of doing anything for the country and not for your ego or for your pocketbook.
These are what we call stock buybacks.
It's almost like international or internal investments are how you grow an economy, not starting fights with trade partners. Yeah, I know.
Basically, when a company makes $100 million,
if I end up going on Tim Pool, which is entirely possible, and I've started researching everything for it, but a big part of it is probably going to be the tariffs. And if it's the tariffs, it's going to be really fun. I don't think that there's an easier debate than the tariffs debate right now. I feel like the immigration arguments get bogged down with so many legal minutia things. But the tariffs are really cut and dry. There is no good argument for the tariffs. Unless you just want to destroy everything. Unless your goal is to America. The funny thing is that Biden won the debate versus Trump when it came to information. True. Trump didn't know anything. Biden just looked really old after his sickness. He did look really old. It was catastrophic.
Company does not spend it on development. Instead, it gives the money to shareholders. And for shareholders, this is great. But for the companies and their employees, not so much. What if there is a bad year right after the stock buyback? Well, let's use our financial reserves to get through it. But hold on, we gave it all to shareholders last year. Uh-oh, looks like it's time for mass layoffs. So the end result is mass poverty and joblessness for workers, as shareholders pocket millions of dollars. This is a systemic issue that needs to be addressed with regulation, something the Trump team is notably not.
A debate on tariffs. I need to stop pausing like every 2 seconds because we need to get through this video. But a debate on tariffs needs to start with nailing down the goals these people have. This will likely end the debate because they almost certainly don't have a clear goal. Yeah.
Not willing to do because that would go against the interest of the oligarchs backing them. Additionally, bringing major industrial capacities to the US is not a trivial task. It's not like those logistics centers you see popping up next to cities where they just build a big metal box and a month later it's already fully up and running. Heavy industry is a bit different from that, if you can imagine. You need industrial scale utilities built out. Roads, railroads, water.
Berto, I know that gas is $4 a gallon around where I live for the first time since 2022. So,
hazardous waste disposal, industrial water treatment. You need to upgrade the electricity grid. It's not a trivial task. And considering how the US manufacturing base has been left to rot for...
It takes time to set this up. If you want a manufacturing base in the United States, you're going to have to make sure that there's the infrastructure to back it up. You're going to have to make sure that there's the investments to back it up. And everything that they're doing is the opposite of that. They're doing exactly the opposite of what the goals are. It's insane.
For the past 5 decades, all of it needs to be rebuilt from scratch. And that would take years and billions of dollars. And much of the industrial equipment needed...
And you can even make the case to... You can make the case for these investments. You can make the case for it. I might even agree with some of it. I don't know if I agree with turning the United States back into an export dominating economy, but there's definitely stuff that we could make here. I think that, you know what, if this is like what you want to die on, then sure, we can have that here. There's even stuff that I would be enthusiastically fine with bringing back here, right? There's definitely like some chip stuff that we should be manufacturing here at home. There's definitely some medical stuff that we should be manufacturing here at home. Like, that's totally fine. We should be the leaders and selling all the green technology to all of the soy European countries. We should be the ones manufacturing that, not China. We should be the leaders in the new technologies that are being invented by humanity right now when it comes to AI, when it comes to green technology stuff, when it comes to microprocessors. We should be the ones manufacturing and inventing these things. every action that we are taking right now is in direct opposition to what I just said. That, and we want high profit manufacturing, not bullshit. We shouldn't be making shoes. Yes, exactly. We want to be making the chips. We want to be making the really high on the production line, the high on the, you know what, the word I'm looking for. I can't think of the word here. Why can't we make shoes here? Why would we? Why would we make the shoes here? It'll just make it more expensive. And then people are going to be working in shoe factories. And people don't want to work in shoe factories. All of the American propaganda from the 50s and 60s was about automating all these shit manufacturing jobs away. All the propaganda was about how based America was, that they were about to get rid of all of the factories and replace them with robots so that we could have leisure time and work on real shit like killing communists. Because people who are advocating for bringing back manufacturing, by and large, don't want to have the manufacturing jobs. And because why would we make the shoes when we could be the ones that are making the microprocessors and making way more money and controlling other countries because we have the goods that they can't produce. Anybody can produce shoes. The United States should be the only one that can produce high quality computer chips. Why would you want to enter a market that you have to compete in? Why would we not create the markets that nobody else has and everyone has to come to us for? The lib pro-sweatshop arguments, you might be thinking that I'm making pro-sweatshop arguments. I'm saying that what you're saying right there is you're advocating for bringing those sweatshops here to the United States. It is much easier for me to make arguments against sweatshops coming to the United States. They wouldn't be sweatshops in America, dummy. Oh, so there would be a whole bunch of manufacturing in the United States that would be automated away because it wouldn't be a sweatshop, right? The reason we call them sweatshops is because they have a whole bunch of crazy labor for 16 hours a day that they have to do because they don't want to spend time investing in creating robots that can do the job for them, right? That's what a sweatshop is. They can't make them up like they do now. What does that mean? It's cool when the idiots on the left can lock arms with the idiots on the right. Well, I'm pretty sure Berto is not on the left, so. You're pro markups? And then you... I don't know what you're trying to say now. Okay.
To start those factories is made in what country? Yet China, a country currently subject to 100+%
1 second. Go back a little bit.
5 decades. All of it needs to be rebuilt from scratch, and that would take years and billions of dollars.
And which again, I want to just restate this. You can make that argument. You can make the argument. It's just that nobody has made that argument coherently. That why we should do this. And no one has been able to make the argument for why tariffs are the way to get us there. 1 second, guys. I'm got to get through this video before clicking anything else.
And much of the industrial equipment needed to start those factories is made in what country? Yet China, a country currently subject to 100+% tariffs. And these tariffs would need to stay in place indefinitely for US manufacturing to survive. The second the tariffs are gone, companies would start moving back to China due to lower production costs. Also, unemployment in the US is very low.
I'm sorry, the music is so distracting. I didn't hear a goddamn word that he said. Jesus Christ, that music is super distracting.
Equipment needed to start those factories is made in what country? Yet China, a country currently subject to 100+% tariffs. And these tariffs would need to stay in place indefinitely.
I never even thought about that, dude. In order to even build the factories, We're going to have to source the parts for those factories from China, dude. I don't know what goes into building a factory. I'm not going to lie. Is there any other country or are there parts like factory components or components that go into factories that are only made in China that only China has the capacity to make? That's a genuine question. I genuinely don't know. Never thought about it before.
For US manufacturing to survive. The second the tariffs are gone, companies would start moving back to China due to lower production costs. Also, unemployment in the US is very low. Staffing those factories would require a large workforce. You usually get that through immigration.
Yeah, and so we have such a crazy low unemployment rate. So if we're going to bring manufacturing back to the United States, what jobs are going to be lost so that people can go to these manufacturing jobs?
Except the Trump team is gearing up for mass deportation, which is notably the opposite. So this big reindustrialization is just not going to happen, at least not on a large scale. Also because what if, and now...
God damn, I can't hear what he's saying over the music. It's got to end soon, right?
In the US is very low. Staffing those...
It's that high-pitched instrument.
Factories would require a large workforce. You usually get that through immigration, except the Trump team is gearing up for mass deportation, which is notably the opposite. So this big reindustrialization is just not going to happen, at least not on a large scale. Also because what if, and now try to stay with me on this, what if other economic blocs will do to the US what the US is doing to them right now?
It's just exactly what everyone said. What if everyone just says no? What if they just say no? And we've found out what happens if they just say no. Trump backs down.
Now. So, hey America, that's a nice industrial base you got there. So nice that we have imposed a 100% tariff on all its products. Good luck. And the standard NAGA response to this is, oh, then our industry will just produce to our own domestic market. But
if Trump achieved his goals, in the best outcome, I'll be living at 1950s era standards. That wasn't a good era. You're doing everything the hard way. You have no choices. You have no money. I know. I mean, I feel like I was about to say something that might be really stupid. I'm going to make sure that what I was about to say isn't really stupid before I say something like that on stream. I'm gonna
that just isn't big enough to sustain an industry the size of that of the 1970s. If you go the industrial route, you need to export, period. But even if this mythical, revived US industry starts producing to a global market tomorrow, they would get crushed by the competition. In 1970, exporting American cars was easy. Not many countries were making cars, and not in such quantity or quality. Today, we have a Chinese EV sector far outpacing any Western producer. Competitors are cheaper, more efficient, and more technologically advanced. In Europe, sometimes you see American pickup trucks.
And American cars just have really bad reputations. When I was looking for my first car in high school, I wasn't looking for an American car. I don't think there was a single American car brand that I was looking for. Because every single person that I knew, even in high school, every single person that I knew that had an American car, their car was dog shit, right? Because we were in high school, right? Everyone had 10-year-old cars, right? Not everybody had 10-year-old cars, but you know what I meant. Everybody had older cars, 5 to 10 years old. Every car that was an American car brand sucked to be in. But everyone's Toyotas, everyone's Hondas were totally fine. Why do I have resting? I don't even know what face that is. My eyes are too bad. I can't even tell what emote that is. Emote. And hovering over it isn't making it bigger. You literally want us to remove food quality standards to remove tariffs. Yeah, I know. People think that that's what the big reason that America is right now is because of European food standards. No way Trump caves. He already has. I mean, he's a manly man who chops down trees and drives a big truck with 32s and a lift kit. Yeah, true. Honda CR-V, love it because it's fuel efficient. Yeah, the first car I got was a Volkswagen Jetta, and I got the Volkswagen Jetta because it was $3,000 cheaper than any comparable car because it was stick shift. So it was fuel efficient. It was stick shift. I had to relearn how to drive after buying my first car. And then my second car was a Kia Forte that I bought. In between there, I had a Kia Sorento that was a hand-me-down from my dad. That was a massive piece of shit. Love you, Mom and Dad, if you're listening. And I really appreciated it. It was very necessary at the time, but that car sucked ass, okay? Jesus Christ. About caught fire on me 3 times. Anyways, I have a big Ford truck and a Honda motorcycle. Based, the American dream. What I'm hearing is Sondsol knows his way around a stick. Yep, bisexual and knows how to drive manual. You can't stop me, okay? I dropped a 2-minute tariff vid. That is what I think will happen. Here, let's watch it real quick. No, I need to stop getting distracted. Yeah, not distracted anymore. We'll watch it afterwards. Okay, and that's there. Okay, cool. My first was a $200 to $300 piece of shit from the junkyard. No, I was really like, and I'm still this way today. If I'm making like a big purchase, like a car or, something like that, I'm like a car or a house, obviously I'll get used, but like, I'm not going to get used like secondhand, not from a dealership that's like highly accredited and shit like that. Like I'm going to play it so safe, absolutely super risk averse when it comes to money. Okay. It's a 2-minute video. Just watch that first. It's just like, it's always just a 2-minute video. We'll watch it. Okay. Sounds like more like a chicken or the egg. Maybe you got so good with the stick shift. You were like, yeah, maybe. Date more men. Why? I'm in a very happy and committed relationship with a woman. Mine is a few seconds. Okay, internet gas, link yours. Link yours again. We'll watch Gas's, and then we'll watch Nayer's, and then we'll get back to our video. Just got done with tacos. Didn't mean to interrupt the flow. No, it's all your fault, Nayer. You ruined it. Oops. Give me your woman. That is the most terrifying thing I've ever seen someone type in my chat. Like in 5 years of string. I just want to let you know. Bar none. Absolutely. Without any compare. Give me your woman is the most terrifying thing I have ever read in my Twitch chat ever. What the I mean, Chevy Cavalier. Wait, what? I had a 94 Chevy Chevrolet. Oh, gotcha. It was my grandfather's. I got as a graduation present because his eyesight was going. Thing was a junker. The gas gauge didn't work, so it was always fun to guess when it needed gas. Yeah, no, I'm because I just don't want to have to pay for more repairs down the line. That's why I'm super risk averse with purchases like that. Ye's Cousin Song is a banger. I have not heard it yet. I'm not sure I want to hear it. All right. This and then
Amazon is increasingly introducing autonomous robotic systems to its warehouses. Here, we see small carrier robots sensing obstructions as...
Oh, that's so cool. The grid lines on the floor, how they're going.
Here, we see small carrier robots sensing obstructions as they go about their work.
I mean, they're kind of cute.
Amazon is increasingly introducing
Those robots are so old. When you say so old, what do you mean so old? And Gas said that this is what will happen when new factories open in the US. I mean, that's just like the Amazon shipping centers that are here now. Like that's literally, that center is probably in America. Did it say where it was
Amazon is increasingly introducing autonomous robotic systems to its warehouses. Here, we see
Oh, well, if it's Amazon, yeah, this has to be in the United States because it's a shipping center. So, of course, it's in the United States. So, yeah, I would assume that we've only had the technology to do that since, like, I would assume the earliest is, like, 2015 for little delivery robots like that. At least 5 years? Yeah, 5 years. That sounds... Okay, you say so old. 5 years is not so old when it comes to technologies like this. Okay? I want to see a pile up? No. Automate it all. We just need robot slaves at this point, bro. Although I call them robot butlers, better PR, but we know that they'd be slaves. I just don't care about robots. The whole argument about like treating robots nice or AI nice because morality, I don't trust robots because they're not humans, so therefore they are not something that I give moral consideration to. All right, you'll be the first to go? Yep, probably. But I'll die living my principles. And my principles are that robots are not people. All right, sorry, Tron, if you're making this into a segment to put on YouTube, I apologize. Cut all of that out. Let's see what this is that Nair sent us. He said that this is what they think the tariffs are going to do.
Secretary Scott Bessent plans to save the US economy, explained in under 2 minutes. This is your tax revenues of the United States of America. It's about 17% of GDP. The biggest spending in the United States goes to welfare. This is closely followed by Medicaid. And then after that, we've got...
What does he mean, welfare?
Defense, we've got interest payments.
Is he including... What would he's talking about the budget. What the... So, in his video here... welfare, he has to be including Social Security on there. Welfare is $1.8 trillion. $1.5 trillion of that is Social Security. So I don't know if Social Security is considered welfare. Yeah, food stamps would be considered welfare, right? Like SNAP and stuff like that. But like, I'm so curious. Is that going to be a separate thing than welfare? Because welfare isn't a specific program. There is no program called welfare, right?
On debt. As you can see, there is a big...
That's it. So welfare includes SNAP benefits. It includes, assistance for needy mothers and single mothers. It includes, money for people to get food if they are poor and don't make enough money to feed their families. So all of that plus Social Security is $1.8 trillion, and Social Security is, well, depending on which one you're looking at, either 1.35 trillion or 1.5 trillion, which is, I'm going to make an assumption, I'm not going to run the math here, the overwhelming majority of 1.8 trillion, right? So, unless he's going to openly call for us to get rid of Social Security, probably not a good video to make. Alternatively, we could, I think Sourcing was saying something about it. If the goal was to raise revenue, we could just implement a sales tax. That is what a tariff is, but also has the benefit of pissing off trade partners. True. Yeah. 100%. if the goal is to raise revenue or to cut the deficit, we could raise revenue, because everybody seems to be mad about what we're cutting in Doge, and that's going to be next week's focus, by the way, folks. We're going to be doing some deep dives into Doge, because I want to see what they've cut and what they've not cut, and what I've not looked into it at all. I've only seen the headlines of people, not looked into any story about it whatsoever. But like, Doge ain't cutting this. Our government is actually significantly more efficient than I was anticipating. I thought that Doge was going to go in there and actually find some shit, and I was really a little bit worried about that. But unfortunately for Elon, and very fortunately for the Democrats and for our government, it turns out the government is actually fairly efficient with its spending, and actually doesn't have a bunch of redundancies, and actually doesn't have a bunch of, like, illegal payments or fraudulent payments or anything like that. It's actually kind of crazy. But yeah, we could just increase our revenues by increasing our tax base. How would we do that? Sourcing said we could implement a 30% sales food on fast food. We'd solve our debt issue and our obesity issue in 3 years, which is true. But so we could do a national sales tax. We could do a tax on fast food. We could do, we could just increase the amount of taxes that everyone pays, right? Like, I think the bottom 50% of Americans have just, like, will never ever pay into the tax system. No Pants Kyle, how's it going? Been a while since I've seen your name in chat. Like, sources tax the fat. Well, I mean, I'm down for taxing that. I'm not saying that I'm not down for that. I'm just saying, like, if the goal is to do it, there is a million ways that we could reduce this deficit. And one of them is to raise the revenues that we get, I'm not sure that I would trust that Elon failing to find significant waste means it isn't there. Elon is lazy. I'm just saying, like, I feel like the fact that, they do have so many people on it, and they're having to claim W's from the Government of Accountability Office from like 2005 probably means that they haven't been able to find anything substantial whatsoever. I'm going to say that probably means the government is more efficient. I'm going to take that talking point. Okay.
Shortage of revenues compared with your costs. And that is especially because the interest on the debt is getting bigger all the time. When you spend more than your revenues, that is called a budget deficit. He said, here's my 4 plans to fix the budget deficit and this unsustainable debt path that we are on. Number 1,
just so everybody knows, and I'm sure everybody's heard this, repeated a million times, but a budget deficit does not mean a bad economy. Being in debt does not mean you have a bad economy. Being in debt is not a bad thing. Personal debt is a bad thing. Business debt, national debt, not necessarily a bad thing. It could mean that you're making investments. If I borrow $50,000 as a country if country A borrows $50,000 from country B, just right, and they owe country B $50,000, but they used that $50,000 to invest in their country, and now their country is making $62,000 of profit every year after the investment went through. And now they're making $12,000 extra every year, and they can pay off all the interest. Just because you're in debt does not mean that it's bad.
To grow, to fix the budget deficit and this unsustainable debt path that we're on. Number 1, we have to grow the economy. Now, you don't grow an economy by increasing taxes. No, we've got to cut taxes. One of these...
I'm sorry, what the did he just say? I'm so sorry.
By increasing debt path that we're on. Number 1, we have to grow the economy. Now, you don't grow an economy by increasing tax.
Okay, I thought he said something else. Okay. You don't grow an economy by increasing taxes. That's not necessarily true, but broadly speaking, If we're talking, high school level econ, sure. Okay, we'll give him that one.
Taxes. No, we've got to cut taxes. One of these disappears straight away. The only way to increase your revenues when you're cutting taxes is to get the economy bigger. Because this is when you're cutting taxes, you've got to cut taxes. One of these disappears straight away. Only way.
Okay. So they cut. Yeah, source. I don't understand. I'm trying to figure it out. So he says, so we have to cut taxes. What was the goal?
No.
What was
we've got to
cut number one
debt path that we are on. Number one, we have to grow.
We have to grow the economy. So we have to cut taxes.
Economy.
Okay.
These disappears straight away. Only way to increase your revenues when you're cutting taxes is.
We want to increase revenues. The goal is to increase revenues. Tax revenues is what you're talking about. You want to increase tax revenues by cutting tax revenues, which will grow the economy, which will increase tax revenues, which is what you're trying to cut. Please tell me if I'm having a stroke and I'm not understanding what he's saying. Am I being bad faith here? Or is that like literally exactly what he's saying? Trickle down? No, this isn't even saying trickle down, because trickle down implies that like the wealth is going to trickle down from the company through the economy down to you, right? But like this is different. Like, I'm not trying to straw man what he's saying. Here, let's go back one more time. We'll
economy. Now you don't grow.
We'll listen to it all in sequence and see if how he cinches the deal makes sense. Yeah, maybe he elaborates. I'm just saying those statements right there are directly contradictory.
Economy by increasing taxes. No, we've got to cut taxes. One of these disappears straight away. Only way to increase your revenues when you're cutting taxes is to get the economy bigger, because this is a percentage of GDP. So bigger.
I don't even know what to fucking say. This is actually
GDP equals a higher real number. Secondly, we've got to cut.
That is so funny. Is this a host of the UK's top daily trading show? It just grows. Right, but it feels like he's going between. He's saying, well, we're going to cut taxes, and that's going to grow the economy, and then wouldn't it all necessarily all just like increase as a percentage anyway? So it would still be in debt? It wouldn't change the relationship there at all? Except for now that you're bringing in a smaller percentage of the revenues that are cut, or you're bringing in a smaller percentage of the taxes, of the possible revenues that you could be. If you cut the percentages, you grow the economy, you're bringing a higher real number, but your economy is still, your GDP, you're not shrinking your debt. Is that right? Is there just like something that he's not saying yet?
Bigger GDP equals a higher real number. Secondly, we've got to cut interest rates. That makes the debt interest payment in the future more sustainable. Then co-president Musk comes into play.
Why? Because you're not explaining. You're cutting taxes. You're not cutting spending. You have to do both of those things together to increase your revenues. You have to cut the taxes, and then the economy grows bigger, and then you have to also cut your spending. All of those things. I feel like he's missing a part of reinvestment. He's missing a lot. This is a dumbed down version of the Laffer curve, which is already extremely simplistic.
You got to cut the spending, right? You got to sack all those consultants. You've got to start laying off public sector workers, but that's all right because you're growing the economy.
Wait, what the?
Percent plans to save the US economy. Then, when you by increasing taxes, no,
Okay,
we've got to
fine.
cut taxes. one of these disappears straight away. The only way to increase your revenues when you're cutting taxes is to get the economy bigger, because this is a percentage of GDP. So bigger GDP equals a higher real number. Secondly, we've got to cut interest rates. That makes the debt interest payment in the future more sustainable.
Is this that? I checked. I don't think that it is. It's
Then,
Berto. If you don't want to talk about the economy, then just don't say anything at this part. Okay, Jesus.
Co-President Musk comes into play. You've got to cut the spending, right? You've got to sack all those consultants. You've got to start laying off public sector workers, but that's all right because you're growing the economy. Therefore, there's more private sector jobs to take up the slack. So unemployment rate doesn't go up.
Wait, what?
But that's all right because you're growing the economy. Therefore, there's more private sector jobs to take up the slack. So unemployment rate doesn't go up. Unemployment not going higher means that interest rates can go down. Next, you slap a load of tariffs on foreign countries that aren't paying.
So you increase the taxes then. So you take down step 1, reduce taxes. Step 2, grow the economy. Step 3, fire all of your employees. Step 4, reapply new, different taxes.
Paying their fair share, and therefore you start to build this revenue side. Now remember, the two don't have to...
And it's not like a one-to-one. Some of these, some of the trade that we do with these other countries, some of this trade is just going to get more expensive. Some of this trade is just going to stop. There's some of this, there's some goods that are not made in America, won't be made in America, that people simply will not shell out the money for to buy it because it has a tariff. That's something that just doesn't exist in the American market anymore. It's not one-to-one. But it's more likely to shrink GDP. Yeah, but these people don't live in the real world where, every single economist, every single business leader, every single financial institution, every single politician that isn't a Trump sucker, every single world government, every single educational institution on earth can say, hey, what you're doing here is... And a Trump supporter will look them in the eyes and respond by shitting into their hand and shoving the feces into their mouth and chewing it up into a fine puree before swallowing. I agree, except if goods stop, it stops markets. The principle makes sense, but it takes a long time to set up. Wait, hold on. I'd agree, except if goods stop, it stops markets. The principle makes sense, but it takes a long time to set up infrastructure to wean off global supplies. Yeah, exactly. And that's something I was saying earlier. If they wanted to do this, and if they were serious about doing this in a intelligent way, right? Because they actually wanted to see manufacturing come back to the United States, they would do this in a much different way, right? They would do it in a much different way. They would do it a lot more similar to what Biden did. It would probably be more aggressive than what Biden did, but they would be a lot more similar to what Biden did. But that's not what they're doing. I think targeted tariffs could have been super effective. That is possible. I think that Trump, too, could have been a Death Star to world liberalism if they were really smart and they put a picosecond of thought into the plans that they were putting together, right? If they had done that and they were really Machiavellian and they had people that were smart and evil instead of loyal and evil, they probably could have got rid of world liberalism forever. They could have just annihilated. They probably could have much more surgically assassinated China's economy. They could have made everyone subservient to the United States. They could have probably gotten rid of democracy in the United States. They could have done a million different things that they're trying to do right now, but they're too stupid to do it well. Thank God. Better way to do it. Well, yeah, the thing is, like, in any future debate, like, until I'm given a good reason not to do this, I'm going to maintain this. I'm just going to never concede the point that tariffs are a good thing to do under any circumstances. Like this, oh, well, they're good under this circumstance or that circumstance, or they're good at protecting manufacturing or for developing economies, or nope. There's like a million different things that we could do to effectuate the exact same result. Like if there's something that we want to do with a targeted tariff, there's probably some other economic tool that we can use to effectuate the same exact thing. Your tariffs. There should not be. We should rescind all tariffs in the United States. We should rescind all tariffs for like and make it just absolutely political suicide to put a tariff onto another country for like the next 50 years and just do everything exactly the same that we would do with tariffs, just with a different economic tool. We have other less destructive methods. Yeah, exactly. Like, I just need to, like, for those debates, I need to know, I know that there's obviously subsidies, right? Like, who was saying that? Like Little Bits was saying, like, if you subsidize the out of these industries and you build them up in the United States, right? That's also protecting your industries. And it's not pissing off your trade partners necessarily. It's definitely not pissing them off in the same way that tariffs would, right? It's effectuating, not facilitating, it's effectuating the same ends. But it's not our economy. Okay, let's keep watching his video and then we'll...
equal each other. Traditionally, tax revenues are about 18% of GDP, and spending in most Western economies...
Wait, hold on. Is this... Hold on, we're at what?
...is around about 22%. Why can government...
Okay, we're at 212. Hold on, I want to hear him say something.
Here's how Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent plans to save the US economy, explained in under 2 minutes. This is your tax revenues of the United States of America. It's about 17% of GDP. The biggest spending in the United States goes to welfare. Okay. This is close.
Okay.
Aren't paying their fair share.
I think that he just started mixing his metaphors a little bit.
Now remember, the two don't have to equal each other. Traditionally, tax revenues share, and therefore you start to build this revenue side. Now remember, the two don't have to equal each other. Traditionally, tax revenues are about 18% of GDP, and spending in most Western economies is around about 22%. Why can governments spend 4% more as a percentage of GDP than...
Because we can print money, baby.
...they take in tax and revenues? Well, it's down to GDP growth and inflation.
Sorry, I started reading chat and I didn't listen to him.
Why can governments spend 4% more as a percentage of GDP than they take in tax and revenues? Well, it's down to GDP growth and inflation. This is where inflation is a government's friend. It might not help you with the cost of...
Okay, he's not a total...
...your groceries.
What? So this guy has some basic Econ 101 understandings that, like, inflation is something that is neutral. It's not good or bad, except for, well, hold on. Let me rephrase the out of what I was just saying there. There is a healthy level. Okay, let's rephrase that to that. There is a healthy level of inflation, a target level, because having too little of inflation makes it to where no one is incentivized to spend money. All right. So you want some inflation. All right. It seems like he understands that. So why does he not understand the other parts of the Econ 101 argument? What the?
But it does mean over time.
It just like makes me feel like when there are people like this who exhibit understanding of concepts in one area, but conveniently lose those concepts or don't seem to understand basic concepts in their field, the second it becomes inconvenient for their argument, man, I just feel like these people are liars. I just feel like everybody who talks about anything, unless they're like if they talk about politics at all, they're a liar. That's the way I feel about politics now. Like if you're an economist and you're like often on CNN, like giving your opinion on the economy or what policy should be, you're a liar. And your opinion should be discarded wholesale because you're on CNN all the time. If you have any financial or monetary incentive, I want some dry, like pencil pushing, glasses wearing, gray suit, tweed suit wearing, pencil protector, and their coat pocket wearing nerds. Policy wonks, freaks, losers. I want those people to give me my information. I want some people that are just autistically hyper fixated on giving me the numbers. The charisma, true.
If you manage to grow your economy by 2% a year through productivity gains or through
Aren't we like the most productive country in the entire world? I don't know if this is going to... We are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11th most productive economy in the world. And that's because there are places like Luxembourg and Singapore and tax havens like Ireland being massively like sprung to the top here, not because they're actually it's the per capita. We're number 11. How far down is China? Jesus Christ, how far down is China? I wish that it told us. Oh wait, does the map itself tell us what position they're in? Oh, you don't. Do I have to actually count it? Really? Okay, well, I'm not going to count. Suffice it to say, the United States is a unbelievably highly productive workforce. Depends on how you define the production. Well, is there a different definition of productivity, like in the economic sense, that I'm unaware of? Because I only know about like the hours input versus economic output. Lucy Hayes raided the channel with 2 viewers. Thank you for the raid. Lucy Hayes, I thought that you hated me. I appreciate the raid, though. We're talking about the economy. I am Vivanced out now, so I'm actually able to concentrate on stuff. We are prepping for a possible Tim Pool appearance, so just got to make sure that we got everything ironed out. This is a very long explanation for what we're doing for a 2-viewer raid. No shade, Lucy Hayes, but I desperately need to finish this video, so we're going to get back into it. This guy is not very smart for the people that just got in here.
Graphics. Then stick 2% inflation on top of that, meaning you get real GDP growth of 2% and you get nominal GDP growth of 4%. That is the difference between your tax revenues of 18 and your spending through productivity gains or through demographic.
As you said with Ireland, Bermuda, etc., technical production of value isn't necessarily meaningful. Okay, yeah. I guess I guess I was a little bit hand wavy with the fact that Ireland and Singapore were on there. I know that the United States has a massive export market, which is why I would say looking at places like Ireland or Singapore compared to the United States, I would say like those are probably not the same thing that we're talking about. Although that is a good point that you bring up, and that is something that I should be prepared to answer for if someone asks me about it in a debate. So thank you.
Then stick 2% inflation on top of that, meaning you get real GDP growth of 2% and you get nominal GDP growth of 4%. That is the difference between your tax revenues of 18 and your spending of 22. Now, the next thing you do to help the economy grow is deregulate the banks. If banks are lending more, companies can borrow, they can hire more staff.
I feel like we're trying to speed run killing. It's like every single bad economic policy that could be done, they're trying to do all at the same time, in tandem. I don't get it. Thank you for the follow, Fancy Philippe Flop. I don't get it. Can someone explain it to me?
Next thing you do to help the economy grow is deregulate the banks. If banks are lending more, companies can borrow, they can hire more staff, and they can expand their profits.
I feel like every single time we've gone through and had to add regulations to the banks, it's been because of crazy, shady shit that they did. I don't think... Can he give me an example of some bank regulations, some financial regulations that are constricting our economy? I mean, 2008, though? I mean, like, yeah, literally, wasn't that like the major thing? I mean, I was a child at the time, but wasn't that like a major thing? Like it was the bank's fault. They had some really bad loans that they offered out to people. Anyways.
So there is some additional tax revenue from that corporation tax. Therefore, as you manage to grow the economy and get that GDP growth, as you cut interest payments, you cut a little bit out of defense and you get rid of a lot of consultants and you start to charge some of your friends some tariffs, slowly you build the economy, you get economic growth.
This is
as
their...
you cut interest payments, you cut a little bit out of defense and you get rid...
Hold on. So this guy assumes that the plan is they're bringing manufacturing back, baby. He assumes that that's the plan. In the video that we should try to finish now, this is option B that he's been talking about. Okay, nope.
They are mostly driven by socially maladapted middle-aged men unwilling to be...
Was that English? What the
are cheaper, more efficient, and more technologically advanced. You know, in Europe, sometimes you see American pickup trucks. They are mostly driven by socially maladapted middle-aged men unwilling to peacefully coexist in human society.
I'll say this about American pickup trucks. Listen, I grew up in Texas, okay? I understand. I get it. All right? I get it. However, the argument that everybody is ripping off America because they won't buy American cars when the cars that we produce the most of are F-150s and Chevy Silverados. I don't know if you guys have ever been to Europe, dude. I have been very blessed to have been taken to Europe twice now. There is no amount of money you can offer me to live in a European country and have to commute to and from work in an F-150. There is no amount of money you could pay me to live there and drive these vehicles. If Americans want other countries to purchase their cars, they should make items that those people want to buy.
Pickup trucks are thankfully a very rare sight because they are horrible.
And then every sedan, I have never known a single person who has owned an American-made sedan or SUV who didn't get by buying an American-made sedan or SUV. Every single time. I remember my parents getting absolutely from both ends because the only car that we had to commute to both of them to work and us to school in the morning was a Dodge. Oh no. A Dodge Stratus that broke down like literally once a month. And my poor, like literally financially poor and also poor parents had to deal with that in 3 kids at the same time. Okay. Like American cars suck. Make better cars and maybe other people will want to buy them.
Incredibly expensive, needlessly large, and consume more than 3 times the fuel compared to an average European car. Basically, you need to commit very hard to the asshole bit to actually get one. And the reason for American pickups' monstrous size is to fleece customers. Nothing more. US
and I will say this. F-150s, there's a role for an F-150, okay? I do know a lot of people who live in Houston who they can justify owning their F-150. All right. That being said, there were a lot of like mid-size pickup trucks, pre-2010, I think, that post the 2008 financial crisis and a whole bunch of manufacturers shuttering their doors and, you know, liberals being put in charge. There were some green energy initiatives that were passed that actually the smaller, more reasonably sized pickup trucks that people love. I don't know what kind they were. I don't know what the models were. But they were like these smaller, like usually like small Fords and small Toyotas that you could get that people loved. But now if you want a pickup truck, you have to get a F-150. This guy's trucks are big because of cafe standards. I assume he means safety standards. I was told that it was because they're big because of safety standards plus fuel efficiency standards that were passed after the 2008 financial crisis.
Car companies were looking for ways to sell more cars and figured that instead of selling more cars to more customers, they could just sell each customer more car, singular.
No, it was regulations. This is actually a good argument for deregulation, to be honest. Or at least an argument for much smarter regulations. Cafe standards, it's a fuel standard. Oh, okay. I might know of the concept and not the name, but I've never heard the name cafe standards.
Why sell you a 1-ton hatchback when they can also sell...
The F-150s in the 1990s were smaller than the current smallest Ford truck. Oh, well, maybe they weren't different models then. Maybe they were just smaller trucks. Oh, wait, that's not right, because I remember the guy, my next door neighbor was a high schooler who had a hand-me-down F-150 that was from the 90s or the 80s or something, and that was a monster of a vehicle. He used to have to drive us to school every morning. It was a ratty-ass, nasty F-150 that barely sounded like it still ran, but yeah, it's still a big old... Wait, hold on. 90s white F-150. Yeah, it was one of these bad boys. One of these big... or hold on, exactly like that, but his was beat to and it was tiny compared to today's trucks. Really? Was it? I mean, granted, I guess I was in elementary school at the time, so I guess the sizing of things was probably a little bit difficult to remember, but it really felt like it was huge. Anyways.
Sell you a 2.5-ton pickup. With the pickup, you're essentially paying for 2.5 cars, while getting only one. And while this practice is great for the
But
American...
they have towing capability. Okay, wimpy, girly Europeans complaining about big American cars. Boo-hoo. I understand the argument that they're big, okay? That's the good argument. Stop with the, oh no, they're big and they're powerful. Yeah, our trucks are powerful. Just like our cocks. Suck it.
American market, turns out the global market is rather limited when it comes to $80,000 over...
Wait, sourcing, how old are you? Why do I always think that you're like 2 to 3 years older than me?
Sized gas guzzlers. Imagine that. Many American products are just not viable as exports. They are designed to fleece US customers in a protected market, not to compete abroad. And it's not like the US lets competitors' cars into its domestic market, like Chinese EVs, to compete with American cars. So why would...
Sorry, I don't mean to say like, oh wow. I mean like, okay, yeah, you are older than me. So you would have a working memory, like a actual memory of those trucks.
Other countries let in American cars. So if America wants to become an export powerhouse, it must ensure that there are as few tariffs as possible, as low as possible. But wasn't this the exact problem so far that Trump and company have been raging about? Their problem is with the current global system of free trade, which supposedly disadvantages US industry. But that's mostly due to the way the US economy works, which I've talked about earlier, focusing on paying out investors instead of actual development. It's not that the US has been getting bad deals from other countries. It's that US industrial products are not that great anymore, and that the US financial sector has
or the things that we're producing are just like really high quality goods, right? We're like putting the final touches on things. That's my understanding. This is stuff that I need to, the problem is with a lot of the stuff that I feel really motivated right now to learn about. I don't know what to look up, you know, like, well, I guess, what are manufacturing? So, okay, this isn't industries. These are companies. It says Apple here, and I don't think that Apple is building things in the United States. God, I hate the cookie stuff. I forgot the first 3/4 of the video. Can we restart? Thank you. Have you comment? Link me an article or a video about it. We'll go over that next. I haven't been able to read an article about it yet. I've only seen headlines. I need to look up what are America's largest exports. Okay, we'll look at that in a minute. Where is fuel related goods, followed by transportation equipment and electronic equipment. So, one other major category includes civilian aircrafts and parts. Trading economics. Let's look at this. Okay. So our biggest exports are these: mineral fuels, oils, distillation, so energy. That's our biggest export, it looks like, as of 2024. Next was machinery, nuclear reactors, boilers, so machinery and shit like that. 12%. That's $252 billion of trade. $320 billion was mineral fuels, that's energy. Electronic equipment, $214 billion. Vehicles other than railway and tramway is $144 billion. Aircraft, spacecraft is $134 billion. We got optical, photo, technical, medical apparatus, pharmaceutical products, plastics. We got smaller things, commodities not specified according to kind. But you can see that the first, let's see, 28, 38, 45, 51, 56, 59. The biggest 60% of our economy, 60% of our exports are just really technical shit. We're not making shoes because we don't need to make shoes, because our people are smart enough to where we don't need to make shoes. That doesn't need to be what our economy is based around. If we want to make some shoes, if we want to have some shoes that are made here, that's totally fine. They're just going to be more expensive shoes. But most people don't aspire to work in a shoe factory. Probably people would get more, I don't know, pride out of working at a plant that makes nuclear reactors. Probably makes you feel a little bit more, have a little bit more pride in your work than stitching together shoes. You're making something very unique that no one else in the world can make.
Turned the industrial sector, and the whole country for that matter, into their very own ATM machine. This is a result of the global neoliberal economic system and a lack of US financial sector regulations. Now, this system has worked out quite well for quite a few people. This is where the elephant curve comes in, showing us that in this system, pretty much everyone profited except for the world's poorest.
The elephant graph. I've never heard of this. Sonsol's anti-cobbler. It's true. Every time I see people with little cobbling tools. Sorry, I was going to try and like somehow make this about British people because I associate British people with cobblers, but I don't care enough to make the joke. All right? Make up a joke in your mind and attribute it to me.
And the Western middle class. Additionally, the top 1% profited a lot. A 60% income growth is very different when you're making $15 a day versus 15 million. Okay, so with all that in mind,
Wait, is this supposed to be bad though? The very poorest are locked out of growth. This is global income growth. Looks like the poorest, 10 to 80% of people, so basically the lower 80% of people did see really good income growth. But also the richest people did. Those people from 85 to 90%, those dudes, okay? You hear me? Those dudes can eat a cock, all right? You want to be in the 80 to 90, you think you're rich, okay? You think you're rich, but you can stay there with your slow income growth just like the poors, okay?
the top 1% profited a lot. A 60% income growth is very different when you're making $15 a day versus 15 million. Okay.
That's true, but I'm pretty sure that this is probably still a very good thing.
So with all that in mind, let's recap. The US tries to strong-arm allies into becoming economic vassals, wants to bring back manufacturing to its territory, and seeks to become an export-oriented economy. But the allies, or former allies, are fighting back and will not become vassals. The US would need more workers, but is currently getting ready for mass deportations. US products are not cutting edge at best, and are a scheme to fleece customers at worst.
I disagree with this one. American products are not cutting edge at best. They are a scheme to fleece customers at worst. That's just not true. Our products are cutting edge, but that's why we should be bringing back things like making chips and, you know, shit like that. Like the most crazy shit. We should be, you know, investing in AI technologies and shit like that. That's what we should be doing because we are building shit that nobody else can.
And the US economy is set to extract money from industry, not vice versa. And on top of this comes yet another problem. US military power, the upkeep of which is completely incompatible with the US being
Oh god, is this about to get really cringe?
an export economy. And just how does that work? Currency. Every country has it. If your currency is strong, you can buy more stuff from other countries whose currencies are weaker. If your currency is weak, you can sell more stuff to other countries whose currencies are stronger. For example, let's say the US dollar and the euro are perfectly equal, $1 equals 1 euro, and that the EU-US tariffs are 0. So if a European car company makes a car costing 20,000 euros, a US customer can buy it for $20,000. But if the dollar is stronger, so let's say $1 equals 2 euros, then that 20,000 euro car will only cost $10,000 for the US customer. A strong currency is great when you want to buy stuff from abroad because you can get it for cheap. On the other hand, if the dollar is weaker, so let's say $2 equal 1 euro, then that 20,000 euro European-made car will cost $40,000 for the US customer. On the flip side, now the American-made car costing $20,000 will only cost 10,000 euros to the European customer. So now the US can go nuts with its exports, revving up those factories, ushering in a new golden age of manufacturing. Except, US military power kind of hinges on a strong dollar. With the fact that it's the global reserve currency, the US dollar is highly valued no matter what, enabling the US to upkeep a military of such size and strength. Building and maintaining their military depends on many foreign suppliers. To give you just one example, major parts of the F-35 are made in the UK, Japan, Norway, Denmark, Canada, Netherlands, Italy, Austria, and so on. And all those parts are made cheaper for the US by a strong US dollar. And you also can't just move these hyper-complex supply chains to the US overnight. It would take decades, assuming that all those other countries would willingly part with their military industry and pool of experts, which they won't. So if you want to export stuff, you have to weaken the dollar. But if you weaken the dollar, the US military needs to be downsized. But if you downsize the US military, you undercut the benefit of a military umbrella in exchange for being a US vassal state. And a weak dollar would also mean that the rest of the world would need to look for another global reserve currency, meaning the US would no longer reign supreme in the global finance sector. So if the US wants to become a manufacturing powerhouse, it needs to weaken the dollar. But then, being the world financial and military hegemon goes right out the window, which kills most of America's leverage on the global stage. As in, why would China, India, or the EU listen to Trump at that point? The EU is the world's new financial center, and the Chinese, Indian and European armies are now on par with the American, so why should they give a shit about what Trump wants or thinks? Give us what we want, world, or we'll stop exporting our overpriced, oversized, shitty pickup trucks. Oh no, what a disaster! Right when those rural Chinese and Indian families were clamoring to buy a
Yeah, there's a little bit, the anti-American slop, just hating on the F-150, which I'm totally willing to hate on too, okay, is undercutting how good of an explanation this is. It is undercutting it so this is probably like right there, the most succinct and easily digestible explanation of this I've seen from someone online. It's either because everyone either just says this is what's going to happen, or they come up with some crazy harebrained way to get there. This is just what's happening.
Ford F-150 Raptor with the supercharged Predator V8 engine. No, come on. No, Trump's plan will not work. They're trying to have their cake and eat it too, basically. So with that being said, what would work? Regulations and investing into American society's welfare. Limiting the amount of stock buybacks, so companies will invest into themselves instead of functioning as ATM machines for finance bros.
Wait,
linking decaying areas.
Wait, isn't that literally the entire point of a stock buyback? Sourcing. You're a smart person. What did he just say?
Investing into American society's welfare. Limiting the amount of stock buybacks, so companies will invest into themselves instead of functioning as ATM machines for finance.
Isn't that like definitionally investing into yourself as purchasing your own stock?
Bros.
And Orange Hue says this looks complicated. It really isn't. People make it out to be complicated. It ain't complicated.
Linking decaying areas with high-speed rail to plug them back into the economic circulation, spreading major corporations' sites across the country so they aren't all concentrated in like three. Into American society's welfare, limiting the amount of stock buybacks so companies will invest into themselves instead of functioning as ATM machines for finance bros, linking decaying areas with high-speed rail to plug them back into the economic circulation, spreading major corporations.
I don't know. I don't know if high-speed rail is just like one of those things that lefties have attached themselves to because it seems cool, right? Like, it seems cool to me. I don't know I don't know how good it actually would be for the United States. I think it'd be cool to be able to use it, but like, would it save declining areas? Why would it save declining areas? They're declining. People don't want to go there. Why would putting a train stop in a declining area help besides like maybe a gas station outside of the station so that you can buy snacks in between stops? I guess you wouldn't stop on a train. I've never been on a train besides the metro here in DC, so. But I can only imagine like you stop at a, you know, like one of those towns that the entire purpose is just to be there for people who stop to, you know, piss and grab another energy drink. The country should copy Utah's track system. But like this, he's talking about revitalizing these areas. How would having high-speed rail, because high-speed rail isn't going to be freight trains. High-speed rail is going to be passenger trains. It's going to be commuter trains. Why do these rural areas need commuter trains? Is it so... Wait, hold on. I guess I could see it being good for people being able to live further away from cities and still be able to commute into cities? Maybe? Maybe. I could see that being like a really good thing for a place like Houston. But like an interconnected one all over the US, I don't know if is as economically important.
Sites across the country, so they aren't all concentrated in like 3 cities, making those places completely unaffordable. Eliminating,
Wait 1 second.
instead of functioning as ATM machines for fashion, spreading major corporations.
Real arguments are always made by urbanites who never leave the city. I thought that it sounded really cool because I had never really done any traveling before when that was like a big topic, and I never really flew. So I just assumed that flying was significantly more expensive than it actually is, even though it is still expensive. And I also thought that trains were significantly less expensive than they are. So I'm not sure if it actually would maybe it would reduce travel prices in like domestically, which would be a legitimate argument for building it, but yeah. Either build the big cities bigger or sustain the lifeblood of small satellite cities. They should build the big cities denser, and they should I do like the idea of having people that either work from home or only commute into the city like once or twice a week, like having something like that. That would be really cool, but that Destiny debate panel was super mid. That's why I didn't watch it. I thought it was going to be something way different when I saw the title on YouTube. The U.S. is massive and far spread out. Yeah, that is also another thing. A lot of the places that have these high-speed rails are like really small countries. Like Japan is relatively small. European countries are small.
Sites across the country, so they aren't all concentrated in like 3 cities, making those places completely unaffordable. Eliminating
Spread corporations thinner. But how would you do that? How would you spread corporations thinner? All you could do is incentivize them. That's all the federal government could do. Incentivize them to open up in rural places. I can't think of another way that you could force a corporation to open up places that aren't big cities where there's going to be a really large talent pool of, people to work. No vertical integration. Yeah, it's like there are reasons why cities are hubs of commerce.
Legal loopholes car makers use to bypass environmental regulations to sell giant pickup trucks instead of regular, cheaper, economical cars. Enacting Medicare for
the cheaper economical cars were bad, and so they lost. We lost. We didn't stop making those cars because, oh, well, the Toyotas were just cheaper. They were cheaper and better than ours. And we didn't innovate.
For all, so that people know.
Like the regulating the car makers, that's not the solution. Like there might be something there with car makers, but regulations, it's not the getting around loopholes for green energy that's making the cars here worse. The F-150 is still super popular. Yeah, but he thinks that the big cars are a way to fleece customers. He just doesn't understand that. These arguments are libertarian here. Yeah, all we need to do is completely upend our entire infrastructure and the fundamentals of our society. Yeah.
Eliminating legal loopholes car makers use to bypass environmental regulations to sell.
Like, why would bypassing the regulations, if they're all bypassing them, then why aren't they more wealthy? Why aren't they making more cars? It doesn't make sense. It's not that.
Giant pickup trucks instead of regular.
It's so crazy how you can make such a well-informed video all the way through, and then like the prescriptions, you know, your conclusion on what should be done, what is there to do. I've identified this problem and gone in depth and very accurately explained what the problem is. Now let me give you a bunch of solutions that don't address the problem. What the
cheaper economical cars, enacting Medicare for all, so that people no longer.
How does that save the? How does that fix the? I don't. That one's got me speechless. I don't even know what to say about that one.
Die on the streets due to curable diseases because they couldn't afford treatment in the richest country on the planet.
That's not what's the issue. Okay.
Nationalize universities so they start functioning as actual places of learning instead of.
There's absolutely no way we should ever do that shit. What the? Why would we do that? Why would we do that? That's crazy. After what Trump is trying to do with Harvard and Columbia right now, where he's trying to force them to change their hiring practices so that they force them to hire more conservatives? Absolutely not. Nationalizing the universities is a great way for someone like Trump to absolutely, completely destroy academia in this country. And we have nonprofit higher education. It's just that it's controlled by the states.
Sports and real estate management firms with classrooms attached. Set a higher federal minimum.
Sorry, I didn't even see the tick that he put up there, like the label. I just heard him say nationalize the universities.
Country on the planet. Nationalize universities so they start functioning as actual places of learning instead of sports and real estate management.
Man, I had so much respect for Adam something. Maybe I shouldn't have, but I don't feel like I've ever seen a video of his where I was like, you know what, that was a really thing to say. Or maybe there was like one or two things, right? But it was like not a big deal at all. But this is like a bunch of things, like all compressed at the very end of a very good video. God, that sucks.
Firms with classrooms attached. Set a higher federal minimum wage. More paid vacation days.
What was it about the
universities so they start functioning as actual places of learning instead of sports and real estate management firms with classrooms attached.
Okay, God. I hate Europeans. You know what? These people. Why would I ever listen to a single suggestion from you guys? What the? You have no idea what's going on over here. You have just no clue. These are stereotypes of America that were boring a decade ago. Jesus Christ.
Set a higher federal minimum wage, more paid vacation days, mandatory severance periods.
That doesn't fix any of the problems that you have accurately described in the video. You've accurately described issues with Trump's tariff plan. And now you have completely upended the entire point of the video. Because your conclusion is dog shit. Let me spend 15 minutes very accurately describing to you an issue that is affecting the entire world right now. Now, At the very end, I'm going to shoehorn in every single lefty policy position that you could possibly imagine, and none of them, absolutely none of them, address the issues that I brought up in the video. He's not dumb, but ideologically in the head. He can't think objectively around issues. All his shitness is through it. All his shit is through an idealist communoid lens. Okay, that makes total sense. Because again, like it was so smart the entire way through until this list.
Hell, even the 4-day work week to increase employees' well-being. Overhaul zoning laws so that more housing can be built in areas that need it the most, driving down the cost of living. These are just some of the things the US government could do to help restore its middle class and lift millions out of poverty. The problem is not that manufacturing is gone, it's that the economy is set up to suck everyone and everything dry. There is still an ungodly amount of money circulating in the US economy. It's just that ordinary people see less and less of it since more and more of that money is concentrated at the top. It's that simple. America's economy is like a rickety, rusty old gas guzzler wreck of a car driven by a bunch of finance bros desperate to wring as much profit out of it as possible before it breaks.
Well, the finance bros are all driving Teslas. How are you so smart, but you just like don't, it's out of touch. He's just out of touch. He doesn't understand the opposition. Holy shit. Damn. I've never had that moment before where I just realized, like, damn, I really could much more accurately describe. I could much more accurately describe the positions and the cultures of conservatives better than someone that's like that smart. But oh well. Yeah, that was like all of a sudden we're back in 2016. Yeah, forget your entire history, current situation, and just think like a European. That's the conclusion.
Apart completely. The car has been getting slower for the past decades and the rattling noises are getting louder. The car needs a complete overhaul. But instead of that, Trump just wants to slap a V12 engine into it and call it a day. The US needs systemic changes. Not today, not yesterday, more like 20 years ago. An overcharged manufacturing sector, if feasible at all, might be able to mask problems for a while, but eventually they will all come back to haunt America. If, by then, there will be an America at all. Which at this rate I'm not so sure of, honestly.
A little disappointed with that video. I'm not gonna lie. A little sad.